Wow, thanks, Don and Alethea. And it's so good to be with all of you again, and those of you who are watching online. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's a joy to reconnect with you and also meet some new people. I want to give thanks for our Hanai family, our daughter Sandy and Durloff and granddaughter Avia, who are here with us. Thank you for being here. And also my guru, Narahari Maharaj. I'm honored that you're here with us, and all the different friends. Thank you. And I'm thankful for those who've also helped us to go on vacation here. So housing and car, and wow, I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Johanna. Thank you, everyone who's assisted with that as we're on vacation. So, have you ever gone into the wilderness? Have you ever gone like backpacking or gone hiking through the mountains? Have you ever gotten lost? That really challenges you when you get lost and you don't know where exactly you are or how to get to where you're needing to go. And so there's this story in the Hebrew Scriptures in the book of Exodus. And in Exodus, the Israelites, because there had been a famine in their land, had gone to Egypt, and they had gotten food and provisions there in Egypt, and they're like, hey, let's just stay a while. They got food here, so they stayed a while. And they prospered, and they did well. A few generations went by, and Pharaoh and some of the leaders of Egypt said, I'm not so sure about these folks. I think that we need to somehow bring them under our control. And so they enslaved them. Slavery is not new. It's been around for thousands of years. And so the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, and they worked under very difficult conditions. And if you've ever been in Egypt and have seen the pyramids, those were built with slave labor. So when you go and admire them, also recognize people gave their lives to build those. Just as in our country, places in our capital that we hold very dear were built by enslaved people. So these enslaved people, the Israelites, were like, oh man, isn't this a hard day? They don't give us enough stuff to work with. We don't have enough food. Why are we here? And so along comes Moses. And Moses gets this message. You know, he gets stopped by a burning bush that's not consumed. It's just burning. And this voice of God comes out to him and says, remove your shoes. You're standing on holy ground. And hey, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Moses is like, what? You got the right guy? Let me get my brother Aaron. Maybe you need to talk to him. He wasn't sure what to do with this. Anyway, he eventually did go and talk to Pharaoh. You may have heard about these different plagues, 10 different plagues. You know, there were frogs, there were locusts, there were all kinds of horrible things that happened. And finally, Pharaoh let the people go, but very grudgingly. They were just out the door. And they were just heading down to the Red Sea. And Pharaoh's like, what did we do? Oi, go after them. So the Egyptian army, they all went after him. And then the Israelites got really, really scared. And it's like, Moses, why did you do this? At least back in our slavery, back in our bondage, back in the old ways of thinking and being, back in the past, back in the familiar, at least it was the hell we knew. Can you relate? And he's like, oh, God, what do I do? And God said, why are you calling out to me? Raise your staff and watch the waters part. And so the Red Sea parted. They went across. I don't know how it all got dried real fast. I don't know. Anyway, so they went across, and the Egyptian army is coming after them. And they just barely get across. And then the waters close in and take out the whole Egyptian army, you know? And they're like, yes, yes, it's going so well now. What way do we go? And so for 40 years, they wandered in the wilderness. My wife would never allow me to wait 40 years to ask for directions. It just wouldn't happen. Now, here's the thing. What we have now is a GPS, right? We've been using the GPS online, as we've been traveling around the island and getting to see different things. And did you know we all have an internal GPS? It's called a God positioning system. Each and every one of us have within us this presence of God that will guide us if we will listen. Now, sometimes I argue with the GPS. I'm like, why are you taking us this way? And Ogalucia will say, stop arguing with the GPS and just do what it says. Sometimes we argue with this internal voice, this internal leading. And no, I want to do it my way. Okay. And it'll let us do our own way, and it'll be a very creative journey that we'll be on. So the Israelites, for 40 years, are wandering in the desert, in the wilderness. And this is an archetype. In Unity, we talk about metaphysical Bible interpretation. And what metaphysical Bible interpretation means, to break it down real simple, is that everything in the Bible we see as speaking about the evolution and journey of our consciousness. So if you read the Bible from the standpoint of everything having to do with the evolution of my own consciousness, then you can understand metaphysical Bible interpretation. So coming out of bondage, going into the wilderness, you may wonder, did God make a mistake? When we go on our spiritual journey, it's not all rosy. It's not all smooth. How could it be? Because the spiritual journey is about taking us out of our old patterns, our old habits, our old consciousness, just like the Israelites being taken out of Egypt. And some of us don't want to let it go. We don't want to let go of those old thoughts. I love this story I'm telling myself. And so we get hooked into this story and we live from this story. And because we're believing it and talking about it, then everything in our lives shows up as telling us, sure enough, the story is true. So you may have a story about how bad things are. You may have a story about how little there is. You may have a story about the presence of God living in you, through you, as you at all times. Whatever it is, Jesus says, be it done to you according to your belief. It's your choice. You can stay in Egypt, have fun, knock yourself out. Or you can take that bold step, and Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, that we initiate into a new journey. And it means going into some unfamiliar places. It might mean feeling lost, and there will be mentors and guides that show up. But all through it is that presence of God. So that's the first thing that I want to offer to you. If you're going through your own personal wilderness of loss, maybe you've lost a loved one, grief, maybe it's the loss of a job, maybe you're tired of this whole pandemic business. I don't know. Whatever it is that's going on in your own wilderness experience, know that you are not alone in this. So the Israelites were led by a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. That represents that presence of God, that presence of the divine, that presence of Spirit. That's our true nature. That's what we really are. That is guiding us at all times. So when you feel lost, tune in to your inner GPS. Tune in to your God positioning system. And know that the ground that you are standing on is holy ground. Know that no matter what a mess or what confusion your life may look like, it is perfect because God is directing your steps. God is protecting you. God is guiding you every moment. If you will listen, if you will pay attention. Secondly, we know that the Israelites were there for each other. Yeah, sometimes they were murmuring and complaining. That never happens in churches, though, does it? Spiritual people don't murmur or complain, do they? No, of course not. They always remember their source is God. They always remember that God is in charge. They'll murmur and complain. Because we forget. We get this amnesia, It's part of this material condition that we get in this amnesia, and we think, oh man, I got to be in charge. I got to control this. I've got to control other people. I need to somehow manipulate life to suit me. And then we forget. We forget that we're really connected to our source. And Unity's first principle, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Debbie, that first principle that there's only one power, one presence, active as my life and as the universe, God, the good, omnipotence. This principle tells us that we can then go into prayer and meditation, which is the fourth principle, and align with this presence. Align ourselves. We can turn on the GPS so that we're not feeling lost, so that we know that we are coming forth as the presence of God. And we're there for each other. That's the second big thing. Community. Community is really, really important. We're in this boat together. We're not here to push each other over. We're here. We're here to stay in the boat together. Right? To support each other. You may want to. You may want to. Oh, don't you feel like going swimming? Aloha. But no, we're all in this together. We need to take each other's hands. There is a Hawaiian proverb, Helepu no me kalima. Helepu no me kalima. And this means take the hands along in going traveling. And to explain that a little further, help each other. Hold each other's hands and don't be a pain. Now, the actual translation is don't make a burden of yourself, but you get the idea? We're here to support and help each other, to take each other along. We all need each other. That's why we call this a community. And whether you're going through the wilderness individually, or as a spiritual community, or as the wider community, we all go through these wilderness experiences, and it's a great place to be. Repeat after me. The wilderness is a great place to be. Did any of you have a little hard time saying that? Yeah, because it's not fun at all when you're going through it, right? But when we know that that presence of God is always there, when we know that we're supporting and helping each other and encouraging each other along, the wilderness is a great place to learn a lot. And this is my Third principle, we can learn and grow so much through the wilderness. The Israelites really became a people when they were wandering through the wilderness. They learned a lot through that experience. Unfortunately, the wilderness experience is not always fun or pleasant, right? And it could be a spiritual community. It could be you individually, both at the same time, even better. And what the wilderness experience does is it shakes us to our core. Yes. Boom. Shakes us to our core. Hebrews, in the Christian scripture, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 27, talks about, it says that, yet once more, God will shake everything that can be shaken, so that that which is unshakable shall remain. Hebrews 12:27. Yet once more, God will shake everything that can be shaken, so that that which is unshakable will remain. That means all the temporary stuff that we rely on, all the little habits and patterns and thoughts and all the things that we rely on, if they're shakeable, what the wilderness does is shakes them down. I call it the great shakedown. It's the great shakedown to get all that temporary, transient stuff shaken down so that that which is unshakable remains. And what's unshakable? The absolute. God. That presence of God that has been talked about today and that we've sung about. That presence of God, that pillar of cloud during the day, that pillar of fire by night. That presence of God living in, through, and as you. That presence will sustain you, and actually it's your true identity. We've forgotten who we are. We've come here with amnesia, and it's like, oh, wow, let's just enjoy ourselves all we can. It's kind of like going to the carnival. And I remember going to the carnival or going to an amusement park. You know, I'd eat all this junk food. I'd ride roller coasters. I'd get on these whirly-twirly rides, and I'd get sick. That's kind of what the world's like. Right? Let's take this for a ride. Let's do this. Oh, I'm not feeling so good. Because it's not aligning with our true nature. The wilderness experience helps us to get in touch with our true nature. Whether it's this spiritual community. I know you're going through a ministerial search and you've done a lot of amazing work for the last couple of years, doing some training and work in the Q process and nonviolent communication and doing some shadow work with yourselves. That's really important. That's doing the work in the wilderness. That's what helps upload you to the next level. On my altar at home, I have a little altar at home, and I have one of those nightlight bulbs. I don't know what those are. 2, 5 watt. They're not much, you know. It's just a light to keep on my altar. And let's say, you know, I'm tired of that being just 5 watts. I'm going to change this bulb so that it's a 100-watt bulb. It can't accommodate 100-watt energy and light. It just can't handle it. You know, most people who win the lottery, within 2 years lose it all and are in bad financial condition afterwards because their consciousness never shifted, never up-leveled to know what to do with it. In the same way, when we have a 100-watt vision, but we're living at a 5-watt consciousness, it'll blow the circuit. We need to up-level our consciousness to be able to accommodate that 100-watt vision, that 100-watt life. that we are envisioning for ourselves, that we are envisioning for this spiritual community. Those of you who are online, whatever it is that you're envisioning in your community, in your life, we need to up-level our consciousness. And one of the best ways to do that is to travel and embrace the wilderness experience of our lives. To get to know our shadow side, to really do the deep work, to be part of spiritual community so we're supporting each other in this journey. It is so important for us to up-level that consciousness. And that's what we're here to do. In Kansas, let's see, Cindy, the leaves are turning, they're starting to fall off the trees, right? And, you know, that was one of the saddest parts of living, and I love all of you in Wichita. I love Wichita, I love you. And it's always sad to see the leaves come off the trees. You know, it would look very, very barren. Things looked dead. It was cloudy. It was cold. It was windy. It was like, ugh. But those trees that look dead, there's something going on underneath the surface. They're building their root system. They're growing their roots so that when spring comes, there's even more flowers and more branches and more leaves. And know this, that whatever wilderness experience you are going through individually or collectively, God is always doing more underneath the surface than you can see. Know that God is in charge. Know that Unity Church of Hawaii is a divine idea from the mind of God. Know that this power, this presence that we call God is here to uplift and lift up this entire community into a higher consciousness. But it means a willingness to let go of the old junk. A willingness to let go of the old patterns of thinking. A willingness, at least a willingness, give it a try, to let go of the old stories so that you can fully upload and up-level into that 100-watt vision and energy that we are being called to, individually and collectively. Yeah, lots can happen on the way to the promised land, and to tell you the truth, most of us are wandering most of the time. Most of us are in the wilderness most of the time. I mean, even when we came back to Hawaii, I love all of you in Unity and Marin. Beautiful place, beautiful community. I told them to tune in so they could hear what I said about them. Wonderful community. And wow, I've missed Hawaii and I've missed you all. And when we got here, I'm like, oh. I love it. Unity and Marin, yeah. It's kind of like telling your wife, I'm going to go see my old girlfriend. And you're coming back, aren't you? Anyway, just threw that in. So to up-level into that higher vision, that higher consciousness, that's what unity is about as a movement. That's what our vision is for the unity movement, is a world powerfully transformed by shared spiritual awakening. It's shared. We're in this together. We're not doing this alone. You may be at home. You may be there in your pajamas and with your coffee. But know that we are one. We are all in one community. We're one ohana. We're in this together. You know, the winds of spirit are blowing through here. And we are one in spirit. Right? So, keep on your GPS, your God positioning system. Give each other a hand. Hold each other up. And know that we are deepening our consciousness. We're up-leveling this consciousness. Like I said, most of us are on the journey most of the time. So why not just embrace the wilderness? Why not embrace the experience? That's why I think it took him 40 years. I think 40 is like the perfect number of completion in the Hebrew Scriptures. This is about, let's embrace what God's work is in us right now. Let's embrace the work that is being done right now in this community. Let's embrace what God is doing, knowing that we are up-leveling our consciousness. Thank you. Thank you. You may have a seat as we move in our time of meditation. And as we breathe these wonderful trade winds that are coming up, as we breathe in this presence of God that is filling this place and surrounding and filling us, we breathe into this consciousness, this God positioning system, knowing that where we are, God is. That there is no spot where God is not. That just like the waves are starting to pick up with the wind, we are each that wave of this ocean that we call God, each individualized expressions of God. One with God, and yet we are not independent of God. We are one. We lift our consciousness as we move into the silence.